Hi, and welcome to the DIY Photo Organising podcast, focusing on topics to help you with your photo management. I'm Fiona from Photo Helper.
And I'm Chantal from Photos in Order. Hi, Fiona.
Hello, Chantal.
And hello to all our lovely listeners out
Lovely
there.
listeners. Yes,
Thanks for being
welcome.
here. So, today we've got a very interesting topics, nothing to do with technology or new apps or anything, but we all know that at least some photos can be highly sentimental and they can trigger many emotions. So, this is going to be our topic for today. We really want to have a look at, what can trigger emotions and what are those emotions and how do we deal with that. So,
Exactly.
yeah, let's start with topics or photos that could trigger strong emotions. So, usually that's life events. Do you want to talk a bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So this topic is very near and dear to my heart. I am, my family would lovingly say, the emotional one of our family. I have all the emotions, feel them strongly, but that's okay with me.
Yes.
So yeah, look, there's a lot of different life events that our photos contain that could trigger some strong emotions. So I'm just going to list off some of those types of events, and some of them might even trigger some emotions to our listeners right now as we go through them. But then, like you'd said, we'll go through some of those feelings and emotions that it could trigger, and ultimately then some suggestions. But we're not coming at this with any professional advice or anything. We're just wanting to share this topic because we see it all the time, don't we, Chantal?
Absolutely, yeah.
Every single person that I've ever talked to about their photos, without fail, have brought up emotions, and I've cried right there alongside my clients.
Yeah, same here.
Absolutely, we have. So those kinds of things are things like weddings. We see a lot of weddings in photos. We see funerals in photos, graduations, birthdays, holidays like, your Christmas and Easters and those types of, holiday type days, or vacations, holidays that you've taken, vacation trips and travels that you've taken, pets, photos of pets and things that can trigger strong emotions, even, things in the background of photos. So if you've got a photo like wallpaper, or the old clock that was in the background of a grandparent's house, or even the photos that are on the walls from old photos, or your bedroom, the old sheets that you had on your doona cover, or things like that. I've got a photo actually that definitely triggers that for me still whenever I see it. And we have these bright green beds that my sister and I both had, and just that green colour. When I see that colour, it reminds me of my bedroom as a child.
I was just going to say, I'm a child of the 70s. I was actually born 69, so not quite the 70s.
Me too. We were born the same year, but the same.
I
exactly.
know, but I grew up in the orange phase.
Oh, yes.
I had a wallpaper. I distinctively, is that the word?
Yeah.
Yep. Remember like these orange, yellow flowers as a girl.
Oh.
I can still see it, and obviously, it's on photos. It's burnt in.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, but looking at these things, they can bring you back into a moment of time, in a split second.
Yep, exact. And it could be that. It could be that colour, and it could be the wallpaper. It could be the old clock. It could be furniture. Some, come across a picture of a house that you either grew up in, or that your parents had, or your grandparents had, or you went to. And all these types of photos can trigger these strong emotions. So let's go through what some of those emotions
Mm.
are. So what we've got, and Chantal, you can go through this, but just to sort of set up this, we've got this wheel.
Yeah.
There's a lot of different areas of emotions, and like I said, neither of us are professional in this area, but we are experienced from processing, seeing some of these emotions. So that's really where our heart is to share with you today. But what we're going to use is this. It's a bit of a tool, and we're going to pop the link into the show notes. So please go to our social media sites, and or our website in the show notes there. And it's an emotion and feeling wheel, and so it's the one that's been produced by the Junto Institute. And it just has a great visual representation of a wheel with 3 layers, and there's the inner circle are 6 main types of emotions that really kind of stem through the range of emotions that we could be experiencing. So there's 6 main topics of emotions, and we're going to go through them with you, and then those feelings that can arise, there's a whole range, but they generally can come down to these 6 main emotions that we feel. So I'm just going to list them off. They're anger, sadness, fear, joy, love, or surprise. So this is the way that they've been categorized. And so we're just going to go through and sort of give some of the feelings that you might feel when you go through your photos. And then they could stem back to one of these main 6 emotions. So let's go.
Okay.
How about we're going to deal with the not so pleasant ones first, and then we're going to get on to the good ones.
Yeah.
All right. So do you want to start us off, Chantal?
Yeah, so let's start with the anger. I think we all feel angry from time to time about certain things. And a photo, as you said, can trigger that. Now, this can be anything. It can be looking at a person, and that could, make us angry, or it could stem back to anger, but what we feel is maybe we feel envious of that person,
Yeah.
We might look at a photo, an old class school photo, and think, that guy there, he really, he was so successful. He's, got tons of money. He's driving a fancy car and whatnot. And you feel envious. Why not?
Yeah.
It's a, it might be a silly example, but things like that happen.
It's true. Definitely. Yep.
Or it could make you feel anxious or annoyed. Maybe maybe you have a wedding photo, which is generally, a happy event. But if it turned out that your marriage was terrible and it ended in divorce, you might feel annoyed. About your ex-partner or whatever. It's
aggravated or resentful, and there's a lot of those types of feelings that can come up. And so even when we're talking about this now, Chantel, I think it's really important for people to just take this conversation that we're talking about, a very sensitive topic, and we will direct you to, depending on the countries you're in, there are a lot of resources out there. And we will get to some of those things to do, but right up front, if what we're talking about now in these emotions are triggering things for you, just know your own supports that you've turned to in the past, and just be aware of that. And we definitely don't want to trigger things that will be difficult for you, but this is a reality of when we go through photos that these things come up. So if we're talking about topics like that, just know to please reach out for supports now, or as you listen to this podcast, or after you've listened to the podcast. So we just want to be very sensitive and aware of that.
Yeah. Okay,
So
so
the other emotion in this sort of not so positive one that we have is sadness. That's
hmm
definitely another emotion, and that could come up feeling you feel hurt or,
mm,
depressed. You've got disappointment or even shame, grief. These types of feelings, can stem back to
mm,
an emotion of sadness,
hmm
and they're definitely, without fail, I've been through with people those emotions as they
yes,
go
yeah,
through their photos. Yeah, it's quite in
yeah,
it's I think it's just inevitable that those will come up. So to be a bit
mm,
prepared for that, I
mm.
think is a really good thing
Yeah,
before you go through your
yeah.
photos, just to know, expect it almost.
Yes, yes.
Mm,
That's why we're doing this episode. It's more in preparation, if you plan to do a big photo organizing project or if you plan to sort your prints and, in preparation for scanning them or something, it is good to be aware that these things can happen and that really strong feelings and emotions can come up.
yeah,
It's it's almost a given. I
yeah,
hardly ever saw a case where this didn't happen. And
yeah,
often grief, as you just mentioned, the sadness, grief, that's a very common one because we all have
yeah.
people or pets or somebody or something we loved dearly that we have lost. So
Mm,
it's a normal feeling and emotion. And
yeah.
personally, I find people have sort of, not all, but our culture, it is still a bit of a taboo, and I feel we could deal with that much better than
Yeah,
what we often do,
definitely.
I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's my
And I
personal
think,
sort of spin on it.
yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. Yeah. And I think, given the pandemic that we've all been
Mhm.
and still going through,
Mhm.
there is a lot more awareness around mental health, I think.
Mhm.
It's definitely been addressed more
Mhm.
openly and consistently as to how people are dealing with the issues that are currently
Mm.
facing our environment in the world we live in.
Mhm.
But I agree, there's still so much around this area that can be
Yeah.
addressed. So we just want to be, yeah, aware,
Mm.
help you be aware that definitely these things, and no doubt you've already experienced them, but I think it's just
Mm.
hopefully helpful for people. When you were just talking, Chantel, about that with sadness and those emotions, I think that can sometimes leave people with the feelings of being isolated and
Mhm.
lonely as
Mhm.
well.
Mhm.
So they fall within that area, that
Mm.
can trigger those emotions through going
Mm.
through the photos.
And what you just mentioned also in connection with, the pandemic, I think these first three emotions that we mentioned, the anger, the sadness, and the next up is going to be fear, these are very strong in that
Mm,
time we're living at the moment.
yeah,
So, and it can be even a harmless photo from, a trip you did 3 years ago, and you look at it and it brings up sadness or even anger because you can't travel at the moment.
yeah,
It's sometimes it's good to expect the emotions, but we can't always say where we can expect it. Sometimes a photo can trigger it completely unexpectedly, like a photo you would
mm,
never think, oh, that's just a scenery photo or something, but it can still trigger a strong emotion.
absolutely.
Mm.
Yep, definitely. So can you talk to the one on fear
The
then
fear,
now?
yeah,
Yeah.
okay. I think that's also, very common. It can make us feel scared or worried or helpless, for example. Yeah, and
Mm,
again, especially the era we're living in now can probably, you know, doesn't make it easier.
no, it's true.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think it is, it comes back to that sort of, even if you're looking through photos and for some reason you might be starting to feel a bit anxious or worried without really even knowing why. It's hard to pinpoint sort of what those emotions and feelings sometimes are even coming from. But often when we go through photos, it you're addressing things or hopes and desires that you had or goals that you wanted to achieve, or and maybe things haven't come through in that way that we had hoped and planned for. And so a lot of these feelings can be triggered through those photos.
And of course, there's more than one feeling that can be triggered by the same photo.
Yeah, definitely.
It can be
absolutely
mixed. Yeah.
Yes, we can be. I've been going through photos where, you're crying and you're laughing and all through the one photo or that one event that you've captured, and So on the other side of this feeling and emotion wheel that the Junto Institute have put together is some of the other feelings and emotions that can definitely come up when we go through photos. So just as we've addressed that, this is another thing that we can definitely address, and they are to expect the emotions of joy, that feeling of just cheerful, hopeful, optimistic, excited, you just that euphoria that you can feel sometimes when you see that photo, and it could be of a loved one that that you've got right there with you, or something that we didn't really touch on before was pets. I think pets are a huge part of our photo collection for many people.
Yeah.
And they come up with, those feelings of sadness and things like that when we see old, pictures of pets that have passed on. But just as much too, seeing those same photos can bring us such joy in remembering those pets that were so dear to us, or we still have with us, and they were little and they're young little puppies or kittens, or but we're all types of pets that we have. So
they're a bit like children.
Yes, absolutely. And for many, they are.
Yeah,
they're fur babies.
Of course, they are. They absolutely are. Yeah.
Yeah. So those feelings that sort of stem back to joy, feeling just cheerful and happy and content and thankful, I think, it's a real grateful. So they're wonderful, and they're the best parts. That's why it's so good to have your photos organised.
Yes, it is.
So you can see them and feel them. In fact, I'm just going to jump in. We're going to talk about something else too, but just at that point, this is why I think organising our photos is so great, because if we are feeling down, we can just make sure that those ones that we know make us feel those positive feelings, and really in an instant we can go back there.
Yeah, that's right.
And that is just like, if you haven't gone through the rest of our 5 golden rules, please do.
Yes.
It's so worth it for those feelings and emotions alone.
Yeah. And by the way, as you were talking about that, I just thought also maybe to mention, we don't want you to throw out the photos that triggered the emotions that we might perceive as more negative, like the anger, sadness, fear. That's not the idea that we're telling you, get rid of those photos.
No.
Not at all. That would not be what we want to bring across. We're not saying that. So of course it's up to you, but that's not what we're saying. That's not the message. It's really, these are things that can come up. Just expect them and don't be surprised when it happens. And it's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So it's a different spin on things. It's not about decluttering necessarily.
No, true. Very true.
Okay, next up.
So the emotion, you're up on this one, love.
The best one.
Yeah.
So these sort of tend to be easier to define or what are those feelings? And it can be longing for a person, which can also be hard, you know.
Yeah,
When I look at a
true.
photo of my mom, that can, because she's in Switzerland, I'm in Australia, we can't travel. We haven't
Mm,
seen each other in 2 years or so, and know that it might still be longer until we see each other again.
yeah.
So I can look at a photo of her and I can feel the longing because obviously I
Mm,
love her dearly and I miss her. But I mean, for me it doesn't, but for another person it could also trigger anger because we can't go on that plane,
yeah,
or grief for the lost months, you know,
yeah.
because you're not going to be around forever. So I'm sort of grieving, or it can trigger fear and worry because I worry,
Mm,
oh, you know, by the time I can fly, you know, who knows what's then.
mm,
So it can trigger all sort of things or
yeah.
emotions. That's what we meant before. It's not,
Mm,
you know, sometimes it might be hard to put your finger on it. Um,
mm.
but when you think about those sort of examples, I'm sure you can come up with your own and um, see it very clearly. And you
Yeah,
know,
and this area of love, I think that's
mm,
when we see photos that we just feel peaceful. We
yes,
just feel
yes,
that really sort of
mm,
that tender, compassionate,
yeah,
um, peace within us,
mm-hmm,
and yeah, that's stemming
mm,
from that emotion
mm,
of a love-based emotion
mm,
of feeling, which is beautiful. I mean, any
yeah,
photo that makes you feel in a positive way like that,
mm,
just make sure you tag them, keyword them,
yes,
you know,
yeah,
put a little flag somewhere on them, write them
mm.
down if you need to, because we want you to do something special with those
Mm.
ones.
And
But we'll get
these
there.
are that brings me to just as a side note, one of the past episodes where we interviewed Katie about the storytelling. She has
Yes.
that expression, you know, when you look at different photos and try to figure out to which photo you want to write down a story. One of her tips is like, you know, the photo that gives you the fuzzies. And everyone, I think, can relate to that. That's the photo.
Yeah.
That's the
Yeah.
important one. That's
Yep.
where all that love and joy and everything is hidden. And that's, you know,
Yes.
yeah,
Yep.
that's the top
Yep.
one.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
The fuzzies.
I love it. So the last one we have in this emotions and feeling wheel is surprise.
Yeah.
So things that could, photos that you could be looking through, and you start to feel um, even a confusion or some
Mm-hmm.
sort of a astonishment, or even a bit speechless, or
Mm.
bringing you back to those emotions that where you've been shocked by something,
Mm-hmm.
or
Mm-hmm.
and that emotion can be triggered
Mm.
by the photos that you're looking at.
Mm-hmm.
So some of those types of feelings, or even just being overcome, I think that's a
Mm.
fairly common
Mm-hmm.
one, um, and or moved by something,
Mm-hmm.
astounded. It's just a very specific type of that, yeah, that confused feeling, or you know, where
Mm.
you've been
Mm-hmm.
shocked into
Mm-hmm.
a speechless sort of a situation.
Yeah. Yeah.
And those can be very strong emotions as
Mm.
well, that can come up through looking at your
Absolutely.
photos. Yeah.
So let's move on and talk a little bit about, okay, you know, what happens or what can we do when the emotion comes?
Absolutely.
Because it
Yes,
will
this is
happen,
important.
you know,
Yeah,
most
it will.
probably it will happen.
Yes.
um,
Yeah,
yeah.
it will. Yeah. And even for us, you know, I think, you know, when you're organizing your own photos, obviously all those emotions
Mm,
are there, and you know, it's sort of open game for any of those emotions to come
hmm
in and
hmm
come and go. But I even do that when I'm organizing other people's, you know, photos, because you can see the event itself
hmm
that
hmm
was, you know, and often we'll know some of the backstory behind what's going on for a
hmm
family.
hmm
Um, and it's emotional. It can, it's
Mm-hmm.
just, yeah. Like I
Yes.
said, I'm an emotional being, very emotional.
Yeah. We both
I
built
feel
close
all
to
of
the
it. We
water,
are.
aren't we?
Yep, absolutely. Which is why I love what I do, and I'm sure it's the
Yeah.
same for you. Yeah.
Yeah.
All
Totally.
right. So yes, what to do? What to do when these
Okay.
emotions come? So we've got, like we say, we are not professionals,
Mm-hmm.
but we. This is just from our own example of what we've done, and just some good sound tips that we
Mm-hmm.
believe could be helpful for you.
Mm-hmm.
The first one is maybe take a break. Maybe
Mm-hmm.
just take a break from what you're doing at that moment.
Mm.
Stretch your legs, get a drink of water, get some fresh air. Now, when we say take a break, it might be a few minutes. It might just be catch yourself, just relax, do some deep breathing, feel that emotion, and take a break and keep going.
Mm-hmm.
It might also be a bit longer. It might be a longer break. So if you know that it is bringing up some very strong emotions, maybe that's the time to stop,
Mm-hmm.
get some support right there and then before going back to the photos.
Mm-hmm.
So that's our first one, is to take a break, and you can work out really an appropriate amount of time of what that could be. It may be a little bit longer. It really may be a longer
Mm-hmm.
break, and it might not be an appropriate time to continue
Mm.
for some very individual personal reasons. And that may be, like a month or so. It might
Mm.
be until time has passed from a particular event,
Mm.
and that healing can take place. And then the photos,
Mm-hmm.
although difficult to go through, having had some support might be a more
Mm.
manageable task.
Mm-hmm.
But taking a break is number one. Number
Okay.
two, Chantel.
Well, that still sort of goes into taking a short break, might be, or
Mm,
just as you just said, have a glass of water, have a tea, sit with it, especially if it might be the more, I don't want to label them as negative emotions, the anger, sadness, fear, they're just emotions. Um, or have a glass of champagne. Celebrate, if
yeah,
something that comes up that makes you really happy, why not,
yeah,
Go
enjoy
with the
it.
flow, go with the mood.
Yeah,
Or simply, call a friend,
yeah.
you know, tell them about it. Yeah,
Talk it
and
through.
share the
Mm,
experience.
yep,
Yeah.
yep, definitely.
Mm, mm,
And of course, it goes without saying, please get some emotional support, and just reach out to those. There's a lot of different resources out there, counselling, mental health supports.
mm-hmm,
Obviously we're in Australia, so we know of Beyond Blue and Headspace. There's a range of different companies that are out there. Just maybe do a Google under mental health support in
mm-hmm,
your local area, so you can find some places,
mm,
and there really is a lot of support that's available.
mm-hmm,
And sometimes this can be the trigger for emotions that have been held down for a long time.
mm,
So, really, it's a very serious topic that we're talking about today, and we really, really encourage you to get some support and help professionally,
mm-hmm,
um, to go through some of these
mm,
really, really big emotions.
mm-hmm.
Mm.
And also, as you just said, at the beginning, sometimes it's just simply the wrong time. And
Mm.
if you feel before you even start that it might be too emotional and too hard for you, if you can, sometimes it's not possible due to time sensitive issues or events. But if you can, simply postpone it. Wait, it's not going to run away. But if you cannot let it sit for another few months or even years. We'd really encourage you to get support, as what you just said, Fiona, with the professional services for mental health support, or also support from a professional photo organizer, or it can sometimes also be a family member or a friend that can just be with you and go through the process with you, keep you on task, and help you through the tricky moments that might come up.
Yep, definitely. One of the other things to do when the emotions come, sometimes it is, emotions are good, and it's not, we're not saying all emotions that come up need to be addressed, other than feel that emotion, sit with it, feel it, have a good cry over that photo, and experience that emotion, and then continue on. And sometimes that is really a great action to take. So, and it can be a very freeing sort of a process to go through that, and then continue through. Exhausting.
It can be very draining.
It really can be exhausting. And so, it's not to be taken lightly, to underestimated, I guess. And sometimes when I'm with clients, and I really don't like to spend much more than about 2 hours if I'm doing the physical sorting. And because it can be quite draining. So, but sometimes just going through that can be a really healing experience. And then you can continue on. So that's an option as well.
Absolutely. And also what we mentioned before, you can actually use the power of let's call them the positive emotions, the love, joy, and surprise. You can use the power of these photos. For example, you can the example that comes to mind is, I've got 2 teenage sons, right? And sometimes they do stuff, like, really, or you're mad at them for whatever reason, and then go and look at a baby photo of them and you're back in love with them. It doesn't always work, or, only works to some extent sometimes. But it does really, it does trigger these emotions. And, we haven't made that up. There have actually been studies about that, that confirm that, and how powerful photos can be. And it goes much further. Maybe that's for another episode, like, about photo books, especially in connection with children. Children love photo books because it gives them a sense of belonging, and you can connect with photos too. So it can go really deep. And there have been studies about that. So, but use that power, but to get into that good mood.
Yeah, that's right. And so that really brings us to this last one about, with our golden rule number 5 in the do something, is exactly do that. Create something that is around an emotion that you want to relive. And that can take so many different forms. Could be a video or a book or something on the wall. And it could be something funny. It could be of a particular person. So you go through a whole range of emotions in that sort of a book. Or but I think use this in a positive way. Use this information in a positive way. Really be aware of those emotions as you're going through the organising of your photos. And hopefully, having listened to the podcast, it will sort of make you think as you're going through, well, I'm going to remember those photos and tag them, or keyword, or whatever sort of methods and things that you're doing. And if you don't know what that means, please go and have a listen to some of the other podcasts. But definitely make the most of that up front. Be aware of some of those
Mm-hmm.
emotions that you'd like to feel again,
Mm.
and capture those photos in, and make sure that you don't lose which ones they are,
Yeah.
so that you can do something with them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The fun
Hmm.
part.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
So yeah, look, I hope that really helps you with listening with some of these, what to expect, and just be prepared for some of these emotions.
Mhm.
And we really are. I know sometimes I'd love to give you all a big hug out there. I'm just really proud of some of the steps that people are taking, and it
Mm.
is a journey, and this is definitely one part of it in photo organizing to be
Mhm.
prepared for. So we just want to leave you with that thought for joining us today. Thanks for coming on this emotional journey with us.
Yes.
So yeah, don't forget to leave us a review on any of our social media websites and details. We'd love some feedback, and you can email us or just contact us through any of those other
Mhm.
channels.
Very good.
Yeah, I am Fiona from Photo Helper.
And I'm Chantal from Photos in Order. Thanks again for tuning in and for being with us, and happy photo organizing. See you next time.
Bye.